one of the original guests at the Jaipur Literature Festival this year isn't actually an author, but a great interpreter and translator of very great writers, Arunava Sinha, who specializes in translating Bengali classics, both period pieces as well as contemporary fiction from Bengali to English. In the process, he's reached out to a vast new audience, 17 books already translated and many more in the pipeline. Arunava, it's very exciting, from Bankim Chandra to Shankar to Sunil Gangopadhyay, Buddhadev Bose, a whole trajectory of brilliant Bengali fiction translated superbly by you and sought after by publishers. What triggered you off in this particular stream of specialization?
We used to bring out a city magazine in Calcutta a long time ago, and we used to publish one Bengali short story in translation. That was really how it began. And from there, the first story we translated was Shankar's. He then commissioned me to translate Chaurangi for a French edition. And 14 years after that, Penguin laid its hands on that translation, and that was how it all began.
All began, and there's been no stopping ever since. You are dyed-in-the-wool Kolkata boy school, and then, of course, the very prestigious Jaipur University. I presume you grew up bilingual, though most of your education must have been English. What did it require for you to hone your Bengali in its many idioms, from the formal and classical to the contemporary slang?
A good dictionary and lots of questions to appropriate people. But Bengali came to us, most people of our generation, very naturally.
But some of it can be quite versatile.
Well, yes, of course. And there is a lot of localization, there's a lot, and in the works that I've translated, there's a lot of period writing. So you do have to go into the roots and make sure you've got it right.
One of the great problems that Indian languages have to reach out to a contemporary Indian national or even an international audience in this age of globalization is that they can't find good translators. And although some of our greatest literature, old writing, new writing, contemporary writing, comes from great literatures like Bengali, why has this problem persisted until people like Arunava Sinha have come along to bridge this gap? What is the problem been?
Well, there's probably no particular impetus to be a translator. You want to publish your own books, or else you know you're just not good enough to do anything. I've exchanged notes with other translators, and all of them have really stumbled onto this calling. None of them intended it by design.
Right. Now, that poses a very interesting question. I mean, for example, a larger audience which has access to classics or contemporary works from French literature or Russian literature, you're always saying, okay, it is Dostoevsky, it's such and such translation I would read, because translations are constantly being done and updated, or French or Bengali literature. My question to you essentially is this, that to what extent does the translator translate, and to what extent does he actually have to rewrite to convey in contemporary language or the correct language what the original writer meant?
Yes, you're quite right. The very fact that a translator in one era will translate a text differently from another means that it is rewriting in an idiom that is contemporary to his readers, because after all books were written to be contemporary to their readers. So that is the spirit which I try to hold true to. And it is probably an act of recreation, but very faithful recreation in terms of...
Can be too literal.
You can be too literal, and then you are in trouble. And there, on the other hand, there are many other things that you have to pay fealty to. You have to be true to the voice, the rhythm, the intention, even the ambiguities. You cannot interpret one way when a sentence can mean two or three different things.
So how do you find your happy medium between capturing that prose in an English language, its sensibility, and also in a way rewriting the idiomatic twists and turns of the language?
Well, one rule of the thumb or trick, I might say, that works for me is reading the text aloud in both languages.
How interesting.
Because when I read it aloud in Bangla and then I read my translation aloud to myself, I find that yes, I've got it or I've not. I can't exactly deconstruct it, But I know when I've got it to the best of my abilities, or this is not working, we have to go back to it.
Arunava, I'm going to ask you a couple of personal questions that strike me as very beguiling. Here you are, a very well-known translator of Bengali fiction. Many, many works accomplished and many more to come. Have you been inspired to write a work of fiction of your own?
You know, on the contrary, the more of outstanding fiction I read, the less am I inclined to add to the noise.
Yes, but when you look back on this huge range of writers that you've successfully translated to great acclaim, is there a particular value or set of values that you draw from them?
Well, yes. I think in all their cases, what they did was not just describe things as they saw it, but they imposed some kind of vision of what they thought the world was like. And it was very interesting to discover the vision in each case, which ranged so much from social to philosophical to highly poetic and symbolic.
Give me an example.
So, for example, Bankim Chandra's Duryesh Nandini, while it's a very racy novel, is actually talking about the dangers that unbridled passions can lead you to. On the other hand, if you look at Buddhadev Basu's When the Time is Right, which on the face of it, there's very little action, but it goes deep into the central characters' minds, and it shows the kind of imaginative sensibility with which an individual can interpret the real world. It's discovering these things that make these works.
And yet, it's also, you take a writer like Shankar, and it's the quotidian concerns of everyday life in Charangi and his other novels, which are at once Dickensian, the life of courts and court clerks, and also of great depth in the intricacy of relationships.
Oh, yes. And particularly, a very rare thing, he combines empathy with a high sense of morality. You tend to be very judgmental normally when you're being moral, but he brings to it such sympathy with people's lives that it blends beautifully.
Right. You have a fascinating double life. You've always been an outstanding student, but the interesting thing about your life is that you've had a very rigorous day job, indeed a series of day jobs in IT as a web designer and constructor and manager. Is all your work in translation done after hours, on weekends and holidays?
Yes, absolutely. Late into the night, early in the morning, weekends, holidays. If I get 15 minutes while I'm commuting from one place to another, I might write a little bit on my iPad.
Right. And how tough is this double life? It seems like you're on duty 24/7, week in, week out, year and year after year.
But I think it is the double life that drives me. Had I had the entire day for my translation, I would probably have been very lazy because, I can do it tomorrow. But because I know I only have those 3 hours at night, I have to pack in as much as I can.
2 quick questions. What is coming to the JLF, the Jaipur Literature Festival this year meant for you?
It's a revival of sorts, for myself, because it allows you to be in touch again with people who are interested in books and ideas. You don't meet too many of them in the course of daily life.
My last question. You're so deeply immersed in Bengali literature and Bengali fiction across such a range of works. Who are the writers, Bengali or non-Bengali, who are your daily source of inspiration, and why?
In Bengali, it would be Buddhadev Basu, simply because of the quality of his prose. I can go back and just read a chapter or a paragraph
Again and again.
Again and again. And it really tells you how you can construct beautifully. That alone is reason enough. If you mean among other Indian writers, there are many people I admire. Of late, I have discovered the works of Ambai, which I've been reading with close attention and with great admiration. Yes. And I've actually discovered quite a lot of very good contemporary Malayalam fiction.
So you think, in a way, Arunava Sinha is showing us the beacon, the light for other language writers to be translated by professionals, great bilingual translators such as yourself, to reach not just an Indian audience, but an international one.
Well, I hope the beacon part is right. It would perhaps be presumptuous to assume I'm the only source of light there. But it is great that there's a lot more translation taking place now.
Arunava Sinha, pleasure to talk to you always, and thank you for joining me at the Jaipur Literature Festival today.
Thank you very much.